Everybody hold up your pictures. As you come on up, just hold your pictures up.
Do we have the big billboard? The big billboard.
Yes, we're going to have that. Cliff, we need that billboard.
That big billboard?
That's on. Everybody hold your pictures up high so everybody can get a good look.
Frank Tyson.
What? I'm out. Yeah, just hold one with someone. Okay. Thank you all for coming to the celebration of life that is Frank Tyson's life. Today we're going to hear from family. My name, as you know, is Bobby DiCello. I'm going to explain who's going to be talking today. We have. Is this better? Yeah. I'll do it this way. I'm attorney Bobby DiCello, attorney for the Tyson family, and I want to first introduce my co-lead in this case, who we are so grateful to have joining the team. The Tyson family and I welcome Ben Crump, who will be speaking. I'll be first, Ben will be speaking right after me, and then the family will be speaking. We have, for those who need to take down names, let me give you the names of the order of those who will be speaking. The youngest brother, John Tyson. His cousin, Frank's cousin, Ronald Simmons. Frank's younger cousin, Angela Rembert, spelled R-E-M-B-E-R-T. Frank's niece, Jasmine Tyson. And certainly last but definitely not least, Sabrina Jones, Frank's fiancée. I need this right here.
Yes, sir.
The first thing we need to say, Frank,
Yeah.
is that when a man tells you he can't breathe, you are never allowed to say, "Shut the F up."
Amen? You cannot.
Never.
That's why we're here.
All right.
It appears enforcement officers in its ranks that do not understand this. This simple act of human dignity that could have been offered to Frank was denied on the day he died. Just the simple dignity of being helped.
Yeah.
Just some basic help.
Yes.
The other thing that's super important about this case is that I represent, and Mr. Crump is aware of this, two other deceased people in this city. Zachary Fornash, James Williams, and now this man, Frank Tyson.
Yes.
And Mr. Crump and I are committed, and he will be explaining the experience of African Americans, but we are committed to getting justice for Frank.
Right.
Justice for Frank Tyson.
Justice for Frank Tyson. It is my extreme pleasure to have Mr. Crump with us because he has a notable list of clients that I would like to just highlight, and it's what brings us here today. You all know George Floyd.
Yes.
I am shocked to tell you that this is George Floyd 2.0.
My Lord.
This is George Floyd revisited. Ben and I had a conversation about that. We talk as lawyers who handle these cases, and we said, sometimes it feels too much, too hard to care this much. And to see what happened to Frank after this man worked with George Floyd's family. Yes. The whole world knew that case. Yeah. And it's our job to make sure the whole world knows Frank's case.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I'm going to just briefly comment that Frank is not as advertised in the media. He was a man that dealt with the constant threat of law enforcement and the constant dread of a wrongful conviction. And Mr. Crump will be addressing those issues for you today. His dying day was met with the expiration of not just the air in his lungs, but the hope that he would someday be exonerated for what happened to him. And Mr. Crump will be addressing that as well. That was his hope. But I guide you to one concept, and then I will give the microphone over to Mr. Crump. Every day, we in Northeast Ohio, and I'm one of you, I went to Lake Catholic. I was raised in Mentor. I worked my first job at a steel mill at 71st and Central, Cleveland Track and Material, when I was 16 to help pay for school. I love the Browns. Love my town. I love each and every one of you. But there's a sickness in our town. When you say the quiet part of hate out loud, shut the F up. When you say the quiet part out loud, everyone needs to pay attention. George Floyd died and the officers remained in silence. These officers killed Frank and did so saying the quiet part out loud. They told him to shut the F up and die.
Yeah.
My Lord.
Yes. My Lord.
My Lord.
It is my mission as a member of this Northeast Ohio community to work with Mr. Crump and to work with each and every one of you who I'm asking, I'm looking into the eyes of each one of you here, and there's a group here, to be active. No more apathy. Equality, said Dr. King, meant something, and it needs to mean something today, including in the way in which law enforcement treats everyone. That's for everyone. Equality is the missing piece. And we need to push equality together.
Amen.
And to end this from a phrase that a bishop taught me that I have always remembered, this is not about skin, this is about kin.
Right, that's right. Now, y'all, please give another round of applause to Bobby DiCello, who has been fighting on the front line all over America, but especially here in Ohio. Him and his law firm, DiCello Levitt, attorney Ken Abano, we have fought for marginalized people, marginalized minorities, marginalized black people who didn't have a voice. They didn't think it robbery to help give them a voice. So thank you more than you know, Bobby DiCello. Love you, brother. Eric Gardner said, I can't breathe. George Floyd said, I can't breathe. Frank Tyson said, I can't breathe. How many more black men in America has to tell police officers I can't breathe before police actually believe these black men fighting for their last breaths on this earth? I mean, y'all, the reason we have to get justice for Frank Tyson is because it's been far too many black men and black women saying, I can't breathe. It can happen to your daughter. It can happen to your son. That's why we have to get justice for Frank Tyson.
That's right. Justice for Frank Tyson.
Y'all understand that? Before I really break down this tragedy and really break down this case, I want you all to repeat after me, especially some of you who really know this more than other Americans. It can happen to my daughter. It can happen to my son.
It can happen to my son.
That's why we got to get justice
That's why we got justice
for Frank Tyson.
for Frank Tyson.
It can happen to my daughter.
It can happen to my daughter.
It can happen to my son.
It can happen to my son.
That's why we got to get justice
That's why we got to get justice
for Frank Tyson.
for Frank Tyson.
Y'all stand to your feet if you really understand it can happen to your child. It can happen to my daughter.
It can happen to my daughter.
It can happen to my son.
It can happen to my son.
That's why we got to get justice
That's why we got to get justice
for Frank Tyson.
for Frank Tyson.
Eric Gardner said, I can't breathe. And the officers said, they put him on the ground and told him to quit struggling. George Floyd said, I can't breathe, Bobby.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And they said, you're talking.
That's right.
You can breathe.
Right.
Frank Tyson said, I can't breathe. And they said, you're fine. Shut the F up. And so you would think, after Eric Gardner, the police officers would be more considerate when a person says, I can't breathe. But then you come 4 years ago to George Floyd. It's hard to believe it'll be 4 years next month, May 25th. But George Floyd says, I can't breathe. And then they respond where you're talking. No consideration for him. And then after George Floyd, every police officer in America should have consideration for when a person who is handcuffed, detained, in your custody, says, I can't breathe. Everybody in America knew from watching that trial that when they say you can't breathe, you get them off their stomachs. You sit them up on their side so they can breathe. So they can simply breathe. They can extend life. Everybody should have known that now. So what those officers were thinking had to be something that we can't relate to. Anybody that saw that George Floyd video cannot relate to you ignoring a person saying, I can't breathe.
That's right.
You cannot understand it. How many more teachable moments, America, at the cost of black people's lives, do we have to give you before you believe us when we say, I can't breathe? And then certainly, Attorney DiCello, to John, his brother, Marcus, his brother, Darren, his brother, Sabrina, his soulmate. I mean, after George Floyd, if any police officer in America knew that it was excessive force to put your knee on a person's neck who is detained, handcuffed, and face down, I don't know where you were trained at. That should be police training 101 now in America. Don't put your knee on my neck. I mean, it's simple. We have that picture, Bobby. I mean, we got the picture of his hands behind his back, and the officer got his knee on his neck. That's why Bobby said, and the family believes it's George Floyd 2.0. You got him saying, I can't breathe. you got a knee on his neck, and then you got the just lack of humanity. The inhumanity, Joseph, the complete inhumanity. I mean, they are joking. They are joking.
Having a good time.
I never thought I was gonna get in a bar fight. While this man is laying on the ground dying, they are joking. And we'll share this picture with the media, but it's just a still from the video that shows Frank face down, and there's a light from the body camera or what have you that shows his knee is right there on Frank's neck.
That's what I said. Amen. Look at God.
I mean, after George Floyd, really? A knee on the neck of a person who is restrained. You got him. He ain't going nowhere.
Mr. Crump, can I just say one thing?
Please.
This is the policy, use of force policy 300 for the city of Canton.
Listen.
It doesn't mean anything. They're pretty words. And pretty words don't make good deeds. Pretty words don't matter.
Tell him.
It's time to change your policy and the way you're training your officers.
You all, they're going to try to convince you that Frank isn't worthy of your consideration. Because after they assassinate our person, they try to assassinate our character. They did it with Trayvon Martin. They did it with Michael Brown and Ferguson. They did it with Eric Gardner. They did it with Breonna Taylor. They did it with Tamir Rice. They did it with Jalen Walker. They did it with James Williams. They did it with Andre Hill. They did it with George Floyd. They did it with Darrell Ross. I mean, how many more black people do they kill and then try to assassinate their character? This is part of their playbook. This is part of their MO. So we need to make the record straight for Frank Tyson. Now, just like everybody saw the George Floyd video, we're enhancing the Frank Tyson video. We're enhancing the audio on the video. We want to make sure everybody can hear Frank saying, "I can't breathe," those 7 times, and the responses from the officers when he said, "I can't breathe." We want you all to hear when they check this post and then how the mood changed and how they still didn't do anything. And that's on the video. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Frank came in there to that establishment, and Frank was saying, "Call the sheriff." You all watched the video, right? He kept saying, "Call the sheriff." And that's important. That's very important. And understand this, Attorney Albano, there was no commotion, there was no chaos until the Canton police officers got in that establishment. That's very important to note.
Big facts.
Big facts. Frank said, "Get the sheriff, call the sheriff." He kept saying that. He was mortally afraid of the Canton Police Department because of not just the history of the Canton Police Department, but his personal history with the Canton Police Department. You see, Sabrina and his family knows, Frank was wrongfully convicted and imprisoned for 24 years. And he always pleaded his innocence every day. I did not do this. It is the tale of many black people, especially black men in America. I'm on the Innocence Project board. I know there are at least 100,000 black men in prison today who are completely innocent. Their only crime, they were at the wrong place and had the wrong skin color. Frank Tyson was robbed of his liberty for 24 years because of a racist, uncompassionate criminal justice system. Frank had been free less than 2 weeks before he was robbed of his life from a racist criminal justice system. And I don't know, John Tyson, what is worse, the wrongful conviction or the wrongful death. I mean, Attorney DiCello and I and Cliff Jones and Attorney Fauché, Attorney Bono, we went through the transcript. We went through the transcript of him fighting for his innocence, fighting to clear his name, fighting to be exonerated. Sabrina is going to tell you when you hear from her, till his last day on this earth, he was talking about clearing his name. I mean, you have a transcript that was filed in federal court where they had evidence of the 2 young people that they say he kidnapped. They recanted. They said the prosecutors told them to lie. This is in the transcript. This is in the transcript. Then the state trooper, who was the main person to identify him, they showed evidence based on the video recording from the vehicle that he could not have possibly identified Frank. They said he was 4 miles away. But yet, they sliced the videos in court during the criminal trial. As Frank told his family and Sabrina, right, John, to frame him. And so he said, no, when you look at these 2 videos apart from each other, from the police, state high patrol vehicles, you see a different story. And he pointed that out in his quest, his motion to be exonerated and released from prison. He did. And the courts talk, and you can read this transcript. They talk about actual innocence is not enough because you were late in filing it. Yes. Can you imagine that? Actual innocence doesn't matter. We don't care about the merits because, black man, you couldn't afford good legal counsel, you couldn't afford good representation at the time to file the motions on time. We just gonna look away from the actual innocence. The fact that the people who were the main people who you used to convict this man said, I was being coerced, I was being threatened, I was under duress, I was forced to lie. We just gonna overlook all of that. That doesn't matter. Yeah, when you think about how his liberty had been stolen from him for 24 years and he was put in a cage by the Canton Police Department. Yes. Does everybody understand why the first thing Frank Tyson was saying in that establishment is call the sheriff. Do not call the Canton police. He was mortified because he knew they had already framed him before. He had been in prison for 24 years. He had only been out for 13 days. What did he think the Canton Police Department was going to do to him this time? That's why he was calling for the sheriff. And I tell you, Bobby DiCello, you know, Frank's worst fear, I suspect, was he feared that they were going to frame him again and put him back in prison. But they did worse than that. They didn't just steal his liberty this time, they stole his life.
There you go. That's it, Ben.
Frank Tyson! Frank Tyson! Frank Tyson! Frank Tyson!
It can happen to your daughter. It can happen to your son. That's why we have to get justice for Frank Tyson. Y'all join me. It can happen to my daughter. It can happen to my son. That's why I'm fighting for justice for Frank Tyson. It can happen to my daughter. It can happen to my son. That's why I'm fighting for justice for Frank Tyson. It can happen to my daughter. It can happen to my son. That's why I'm fighting for justice for Frank Tyson. It can happen to my daughter. It can happen to my son. That's why I'm fighting for justice for Frank Tyson.
No peace! No peace! No peace!
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to hear from John Tyson, the youngest brother of the family and Frank's little brother.
Yes, my name is John Tyson. Frank Tyson was my older brother. Just on behalf of the Tyson family, through our mourning, we just want justice, answers, and accountability. We just want our due process.
We love y'all.
Justice for Frank Tyson.
I want to recognize Darren Tyson. Darren, put your hand up, please. This is
Yeah.
Darren. This is the oldest brother. Right here.
Yeah.
I want to recognize Marcus Tyson. Melvin Tyson. Melvin. Middle brother. We're next going to hear from Frank's cousin, Ronald Simmons.
Ronald, take it from you.
Morning, everyone. I just want to give thanks to God for being here today because, you know, without him, we don't survive. But it's an evil thing to wake up every day and be in a position where you look back and you say, this right here is the same thing all over again.
My Lord.
Here's a man that come from a great family. My uncle worked hard to make sure his kids had the best. They went to the best schools. They didn't go to brats. They weren't. My aunt stayed home and took care of her sons, and he worked 2 jobs. He trained them to work. Them boys worked, and I had the opportunity to be there around them. It was a joy to go to a place where my uncle built a brand new home. Yeah, he did. And he was paying back then more money than what you could ever imagine. And he raised 7 boys. He never denied them anything.
Amen.
Never denied them. And to see this here, where we've got this picking, nicking about how he was raised, you will not disgrace my family.
Tell him, Ronald. Tell him, Ronald.
And I'm in a position at this point to stand here and be proud, even though he did 24 years. He did 24 years. But what did he do prior? He was trained to work. When he got out, his goal was to get back out and be able to survive and be like his dad. Them boys were workers. He didn't come out with I wish I could show you the picture. The first picture I got in my phone of him, he's carrying a file cabinet in his hand of everything he had done through the course of being locked up for 24 years. He hit a pole, and you got to see the overall, and you'll understand. This was only the way things were not supposed to be. He got actually murdered in the hands of the police officers. Negligence that they have no knowledge of what to do. They never talked to him. They never did any of these things. You know what? You know what killed him? Being black.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Being black. You know the problem with it is? You got all these Christian, Caucasians, whoever. I'm just talking in general. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about one thing. And if them officers would have been trained prior, that one thing in life is you will have love in your heart. Because a man will not help another man. They seen him, and I'm not talking about the Canton police officers. I'm talking about the overall bar. No one had enough love in their heart to help that man. They watched him. Why? Because he was black. I got a problem with this. So I just thank God for all of you being here today. And, you know, we've hired nothing but the best. I stand between them. They've done a great job. They've come in, they've taken care of business, and we will not lose.
Justice for Frank Tyson. Justice for Frank Tyson. Justice for Frank Tyson. Thank you, Ronna.
Next, we're going to hear from Angela Rembert, Frank's younger cousin.
Good morning. My name is Angela Rembert. Frank was my older cousin. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yes. From James Baldwin, 1972.
There you go.
Take your time.
You got this.
I just ask for time and just give me a little grace.
We love you. Take your time.
If one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those precisely who need the law's protection most, and listens to their testimony. It's unfortunate that Frank was not protected, and you will not have an opportunity to hear his testimony.
No.
I remember it was just days after him coming home, I kept calling my mom. When is Frank coming? When is Frank coming? When is Frank coming? He said he was going to be at my mom's house at about 3:15. I had some things to do with my daughter, didn't get there till later, and I said, you know what? I'm going to call my mom again to see if Frank has arrived. I could hear him in the background. If anyone knows anything about Frank, his laugh was contagious. He greeted me with a hug like no hug I've ever had. It was so tight, so tight. And we talked about, Sabrina was there as well. And he shared with me that next day he was going up to Cleveland to speak with an attorney regarding the 24 years that he served unjustly.
Truth.
Wow.
Just understand that we love Frank, and we will be here.
He was unprotected.
And he was unprotected.
Unprotected.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Sabrina.
I'm Angela.
He was unprotected. My Lord.
Next, we're going to hear from Frank's niece, Jasmine Tyson.
Just say what's on your heart, baby.
Breathe, Jazz.
You can do it.
Breathe, baby.
It's okay, Jazz.
I don't really want to try to talk as much
I got you.
because all I can just remember talking to him, remember wanting to visit with him when he came home, because that's all we talked about, is seeing him. But all I just have is
It's okay.
the memories of Grandma and my uncles telling me everything about him and how he is. And I want everybody to know, stop painting that picture of his crimes, because that's not him.
No.
That is not him. He did not do what you guys are painting him as. He is a wonderful person from all the memories I know of everybody telling me. I just know my uncle is going to be missed. I laugh with him on the telephones when I call Sabrina when he got home. And I just know in my heart, I love him. I know his brothers are going to miss him. And I could just still remember the laughter and everything from him. But watching that video is heartbreaking.
It's okay, Jasmine.
We got you, man.
But everybody, justice is for him.
Justice for Frank Tyson.
Justice for Frank Tyson. That's it, you got it.
Yeah, you know, it is so difficult for this family when you think about how hard they have fought for 24 years to try to get Frank out of prison because they all believed he was wrongfully convicted. And then when he get out of prison, to still have him being stereotyped by a racist system just because they could never see past his skin color. What do I mean? Frank talked about how the police beat him up in the first place to get the confession out of him. And then you had, at the very end, the police beating him. I mean, and then not offering him any humanity. I mean, think about, y'all, put a stop clock on and just sit in a room for 8 minutes by yourself and see how much time really passed while that man was on the ground moaning and they didn't do anything to help him. I mean, it does remind you of George Floyd, those 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That's a lot of time for you to see a human being struggling for life. And as a fellow human being, you do nothing. You do nothing. And the fact, Attorney DiCello,
Yes, sir.
I was listening to Jasmine and she was shaking up there, and I just kept thinking, she said, don't try to paint them with those accusations. Their family know best.
That's right.
My grandmother used to always say when we were little children, what's worse than a lie? To tell the truth and have nobody believe you. That is Frank Tyson's story. Stole 24 years of his life, Bobby.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Okay, and finally, we have Sabrina Jones, Frank's fiancée.
And Bob, I think we should tell him that Sabrina was with him before he went to prison and stuck by him all 24 years. Kept fighting for her man, kept fighting for the truth, kept fighting for freedom, kept fighting for her soulmate, her black king, her love. Sabrina Jones. If you need to leave. Exactly, black woman love.
This is hard.
Take your time.
When Frank got sentenced 24 years, he started working on his case. He didn't stop.
Day one.
Until the end, till he got out. He still worked on his case. he was determined for his innocence.
He loved you, Sabrina.
He did.
He didn't get a chance to, we did go to Cleveland to talk to the lawyer, but the lawyer wasn't there to take his case. He did send the papers up to the Stark County. They got it. They know. They do know. They know what they did.
Yeah, they know what they did.
Yes, they did.
Do it every day in America.
Every day. Common here. Common here.
He had a future. He had a plan. He was ready. He wasn't ready to die, though.
No. No.
He was ready to go to work.
Yeah.
But the cops, the two cops, they just ended his life. They didn't give him a chance. Not at all. I can't do this.
Justice for Frank Tyson.
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 Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
You did real good by Frank. Good job. You did real good by
As Sabrina was finishing her comments, John came up to me and said he had one more thing to tell everybody. So John, the youngest brother.
So not only was he sentenced to 24 years, he was also placed on 3 years probation, supervised probation. So, I mean, he was fighting for that too. So, I mean, 24 plus 3, that's 27. That's more than half his age.
Never hurt nobody.
So when,
Never
yes.
hurt nobody.
So when is enough enough?
There you go, John.
And that's a great point to make. Frank was never accused of a violent crime. They said that the kidnapping, and read the transcript, you don't have to take Attorney Ben Crump or Attorney DiCello word for it. It's in the United States District Court, Northern District, Ohio, Eastern Division. Frank Eugene Tyson versus Benny Kelly Warden.
He did it.
And that's in the transcript. It's documented in the records. The Frank Tyson story. The fact that they actual innocence don't matter.
No.
He didn't file in time. It didn't matter that he had affidavits for the two main witnesses that they said, who they said were kidnapped, said we were forced to lie by the prosecutor.
Get rid of all of them.
It happens every day in America.
Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
Say his name.
Frank Tyson.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
Justice.
No peace.
When the average person hears the word kidnap, you think you kidnap somebody, tie him up, throw him in the trunk. In the eyes of the law, kidnapping is just make someone do something against their will. And by saying against their will, you can tell them to shut up, get out the way, push them. And that could be a kidnapping charge. And there's people out here with sexual harassment charges or whatever. I mean, did they really do what it said? But just the charge itself put it in the person's mind that is the severity of a crime.
Yeah.
But you actually have to say, look at the transcripts. What is the charge under?
Yeah. Look at the transcript, look at the video. Don't need to say no more, just look at the video. Don't need to say no more, just look at the video. Don't need to say no more, just look at the video. Don't need to say no more, just look at the video. We got to make everybody in America watch the Frank Tyson video.
Okay, just a word of courtesy and advice. The family will not be taking questions. So please, members of the community, give them their space. This has been very difficult for them. You can direct all questions. What's up?